Caitlin. We are recording, though we can't use the swivel because you were just about your battery was about dead, so we've got it plugged in. So I'll try to stay right here so that you can hear all of this. This last test will be just like the others. There will be true, false, and then there will be quotes that you've got to tell me who said it, when was it, and what did it mean, and then there will be several short answer. You get what?
Buzzers or...
No, I'm going to give notes, and we might get to buzzards in a minute.
Oh, you did.
Yes.
Have you graded the other test?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think. Have I not?
I don't know.
I don't have it.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, did we ever see what our grade was on last time?
Was it in the last 6 weeks?
That was the beginning of this. That was
No,
the
it
day,
was the 6
beginning of
weeks.
the 6 weeks.
Okay, well,
Oh, it is.
I will check that when y'all have a bathroom break.
Okay.
Because the only ones I've got at home to grade right now are Frankenstein, and that's not this.
Still grading those?
That's the second set. The first class has got 12. The second class has got 18. And there's 6 essays. So they take a little while. Yes, why do I do that to myself?
Yeah.
Because y'all get to have that next year. We start tests at 7 in the morning. So much fun. Okay, this is the pastor and his parishioner. And again, a very... Okay, guys, quit talking. This is even your title is kind of wrong there in that they're going to meet in the forest, and they have not in 7 years touched, spoken, anything. And she says, "Have you found peace?" And he says, No, not any. And just look at what guilt does to them. It absolutely destroys their peace. She certainly meets him out in the forest. Interestingly enough, that's the only place that she could meet him with some anonymity, that nobody knowing. And yet, what else is supposed to happen in the forest? That's where the black man is. And so it is. It doesn't have a great connotation here. She's asked him if he's found peace, and he says, "No, nothing but despair." He said, "What else could I look for leading such a life as mine?" He says, were I an atheist, I might have found peace, but not as a Christian. And let me just say that there's a little bit of truth there. Not that I was recommending that you be an atheist, of course, but if you know the Lord, then your conscience is going to kick in well, and there's going to be times you really feel guilty for not doing what you're supposed to do. And she says, "But the people love you. Does that not help?" He said, "Oh no, that makes it worse." And so it is absolutely miserable. He said everything has been falsehood and emptiness and death. And then so of course her meeting him is to do what? She has a very specific purpose.
Tell him about Chillingworth.
To tell him about Chillingworth. This is not to meet him and kiss him. It's to meet him and tell him you've got a serpent in the garden of your home. And he says, "You have an enemy under your own roof." And so she tells him about this, and she said, "Forgive me in everything else I've tried to be true to you." And she really has. She says, "Truth is the one virtue which I might have held fast, and did hold fast, save when thy good, thy life, thy fame were put in question. And then I consented to a deception. But a lie is never good, even though death threatened on the other side." And she said, "Roger Chillingworth, your physician, was my husband." And you just almost want to hear it's almost like the guillotine falls. It's like, oh my goodness. I mean, this is huge at this point. And he looked at her with violence of passion. He's horrified. He said, "I should have known." He said, in my heart of hearts, I think I did know. And she asks him over and over to forgive her for keeping this secret. And he says, "I do forgive you." It says, "May God forgive us both." He says, "We are not, Hester, the worst sinners in the world. There's one there's one worse even than this polluted priest. The old man's revenge has been blacker than our sin." Now, let me say, let's talk. This is kind of funny. Let's talk here about the differences in sin. Is his sin worse than theirs?
No, also is the same.
Is it?
It's
Different
consequences.
consequences.
Okay, let me suggest to you that. Okay, this is going to be fun. All sin is the same in that all sin separates us from God, and means that we need a savior. All sin can't be exactly the same if there are levels of reward in heaven and levels of punishment in hell. Then some sins are worse than others. How do we know? Not counting Dante, who, by the way, is fiction. By the way, much of what we believe about hell, really, honestly, I'm going to step right over here. I'll be right back, Caitlin. So, oddly enough, much of what we believe about hell is out of a fictional book from the 1300s by Dante. And this is, he calls it the Divine Comedy. Comedy just meaning there's a happy ending. And in this, Virgil, which those of you taking Latin will understand. Virgil is going to try to get to the celestial city, but he literally has to walk through hell to get there. And so it describes hell. And so you have hell, purgatory, which doesn't exist, and paradise. Okay. But there is a verse in the Bible that tells us there are levels of hell. Okay, click through your little pea brains and see if you can think what that might be. It is Jesus Christ's own words when he says he's talking to this man about leading children astray, and he says it would be better for that man than for those in Sodom and Gomorrah. If there's a better, there's a worse. And so all sin separates us from Christ, and in that way it is equal. All sin is not equal. And next year when we talk about, I don't have your Bible. Okay, whatever. Sexual sin has its own category, and by the way, sexual sin is pretty serious because you are the temple of the Holy Ghost, and so if you pervert that temple, if you sin against that temple, it is a very serious sin against the Holy Spirit. And so, no, that is not the same as telling a little white lie. So get past the black and white of all sin is the same. No, even Christ said there's a better and a worse. In Dante's picture of hell, have I ever given you the hell handout? Oh my goodness, I should give you the hell handout. Okay, so it's a two-page, you would know I would have a hell handout. Okay, sorry. It's a two-page description of what happens to a man on his first day in hell and what the different elements of hell are. And it's called that hideous doctrine. And he says in that, and if you study this hideous doctrine of hell, what should that do for you? Number one, it should make you want to be more holy because you see how much God hates sin. And the second, it should make you very evangelical. There shouldn't be a person on this earth that you would wish that upon. I mean, the very best thing that could happen to Ahmadinejad is just to get marvelously saved, not bombed. And some of you guys would probably like to bomb him, but I'm just telling you, the best thing that can happen is the other. And so he says, is his sin worse? Well, their sin was pretty bad because it was a physical sin. It was certainly a very spiritual sin. It was a sin against their bodies. He is a priest. He is a minister. I mean, of all people to have fallen, it's pretty egregious. But then we bring Chillingworth in, and he brings in hatred and vengeance that's so long-lasting that it's changed the whole countenance of his face. He's darker. He's sootier. Can you die of guilt? Yes. Can you die of vengeance? Yes. Both of them, they're both pretty egregious. I'm not sure I could say one is worse than the other, but they're both pretty darn bad. Okay, so they sit down side by side. He says, Hester, here is a new horror. Roger Chillingworth knows your purpose to reveal his true character. Will he continue then to even keep our secret? What will now be his course of revenge? So now he thinks, after all I've gone through for 7 years to cover this up, is it now going to be wide open. So he's very concerned about that. And finally, he just says it's far worse than death to live under his evil eye. And she says, what a ruin has befallen you. Oh my goodness. He says, the judgment of God is on me, and it's too mighty for me to struggle with. And then he turns to her, oddly enough, in dramatic irony here, he turns to her and says, how would you advise me? At this point, he's so in the middle of this mess, he just says, what should I do? And she said, get out of town. What the heck? This world, whither leads yonder forest track? But it goes just back to the settlement, but it goes the other way too. And so in effect, she just says, go someplace else. Start over. And honestly, in this chapter, they kind of decide to do that, don't they? And you think, yay. She says, you're crushed under 7 years' weight of misery, but you shall leave it all behind thee and not cumber thy steps. And at this point he says, O Hester, thou tellest of running a race to a man whose knees are tottering beneath him. I must die here. Of course, that's foreshadowing. There's not the strength of courage left me to venture into this wide, strange, difficult world alone. Okay, I'm sorry. This guy's just, I just couldn't do that by myself. Oh, gosh. Just kind of hear, never mind, I'm going to say anything else. It was the last expression of despondency of a broken spirit. And she says, thou shalt not go alone. And it says, then all was spoken. And all the girls want to go, oh. Okay, there's, okay, never mind. Okay, what?
I said, not really.
Not really? Oh, I did.
Wimp.
He's a wimp?
So nice.
I don't know.
Well,
the
she's-
girl's not supposed to be the backbone of the relationship. Come on. Like,
Well,
tell me
that,
what to
This
do.
guy's
okay, he's broken, though.
True.
She's really been made by the Scarlet Letter. She's gotten stronger and stronger and stronger by facing down the thing that she dreaded. And he's hidden it until he is literally broken in body and spirit. So, yes, she's the stronger right now. And let me just say, it sounds real good for the husband always to be the strong one. That doesn't always stay that way. I mean, Malcolm got very ill. And finally, let me just tell you who was running the household. There wasn't an option. What if your husband gets ill and suddenly you've got to go out and make a living? That's really the reason a whole lot for young women to get a good education. Because let me just say that can happen. And you might not, and through nothing that you've done, that could happen. And so, you kind of both need to be able to pick up the pieces. You're really supposed to go through life as a couple. Yes, he's the head of the home, and I believe that strongly. Don't misunderstand me. Anything with two heads is a monster. Just remember that. So, gentlemen, I do expect you to be the heads of your home. And let me just say that is a very heavy weight. And it's a very heavy responsibility. From the second you say, I do, you're not only the financial head of the home, you're the spiritual head of the home. And so if all the darts are hitting your family, you better get on your knees and figure out what's going on. And it is your problem. Okay, I just thought I'd throw that out there. Okay, a little heavy once in a while. Okay, a flood of sunshine. Okay, at this point, they kind of give up to being together. He says, do I even feel joy again? I thought the germ of it was dead in me. He says, you're my better angel. Okay, now, is this a good thing? No, they've fallen back into the same thing. He is for the moment released of this. Nature sympathizes. How does nature sympathize? ZT. You don't even have your book open. You're not even taking notes. You're not highlighting anything. You're going to be. Come Thursday. Oh, sorry, I just say that. Marky? That's good. I know you're taking notes. Okay, how did nature sympathize with them as a couple?
They kind of reveal themselves through.
Wait, where is this?
The title of chapter 18. Okay.
Because sun comes
The
out.
sun shone. Okay, what had the sunlight done before with Hester?
Afraid of Hester.
Ah, it ran from her, and now the sun shines on her. Okay, there it is. Such is the sympathy of nature. And then she says, "Oh, by the way, we have the most sweet little girl." Okay, thou must know Pearl, our little Pearl. She's a strange child. I don't even understand her, but you'll love her dearly because I do. It's like, and let me just say, if the Lord gives you a strange little child, you'll love them too. I don't know. And he says, "Will she be glad to know me?" And she says, "She will love you dearly." And so, and honestly, this little girl has been dying to have a father. I was sharing with the class just before you that there. I heard that in one of the prison systems, and the reason I heard about this is my sister-in-law has been a librarian in prisons, and she was telling me about this. And she's like a little bitty, she's like about your size or littler. I mean, and here she's, the prison librarian. I'm thinking, anyway, but she said that it was before Mother's Day, and they decided that to ask the men, this is men, inmates, if they would like to send a Mother's Day card. And they provided the cards for them, and they almost all of them took a Mother's Day card and wrote something to their mothers. And it went over so well, a month later they thought, well, we'll try it for Father's Day. And they had no takers for a Father's Day card. Lack of a father. What that really does to someone doesn't necessarily mean you go to prison, but it doesn't help you in either. And so, I mean, if you've got a dad, anywhere, it's a good thing. And this also speaks to you young men, that you stick it out. You stick it out and you be a dad to your kids. And but anyway, so honestly, she calls to Pearl, and she approaches slowly in the forest. And she comes back slowly, it says, because she saw the clergyman. I'm not sure I want to get anywhere near him, because he's not been so nice to me. Then you have the child at the brook side. And again, the brook is representative of her, and it's freedom, and it's laughing, and it's bubbling, and it's out of control. And she certainly is. And they watched Pearl's slow advance together. It says, "Let her see nothing strange, no passion nor eagerness in thy way of accosting her." In other words, come to her kind of quietly and gently. Our Pearl is a fitful and fantastic little elf sometimes. Especially she is seldom tolerant of emotion when she does not fully comprehend the why and wherefore. The child hath strong affections. She loves me and will love thee. And does she?
No. Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah, I think she kind of does. I think she does.
I watched
she
she
does
jealous
maybe.
of them to some extent.
A little bit. Like, what are you doing with my mother? Okay. But she comes up to them. And by the way, she's on one side of the brook. And he says, "I observe a strange fancy that this brook is the boundary between two worlds, and that thou canst never meet thy Pearl again. Or is she an elfish spirit who, as the legends of our childhood taught us, is forbidden to cross a running stream? Pray hasten her, for this delay has already imparted a tremor to my nerves." I'm really getting nervous that she's not gonna come. Pearl finally responds, comes across. She fixed her bright, wild eyes on her mother, now on the minister, now on both of them in the same glance, like, what is this? He feels the child's eyes upon himself, and his hand, with a gesture so habitual, steals over his heart. Of course, ultimately it will be heart. His heart will just give out. It's how he will finally die. And so he's been probably suffering with some angina, some pain in his heart for a long time. Pearl stretches out her hand and points toward her mother's breast. So he's doing this, and she says, same thing. And so she kind of furrows her brow. Hester finally says, "Come, or I'm going to be angry with thee," as if that's ever made any difference. So ultimately she keeps pointing her forefinger at her mother's bosom. She says, I see what ails the child. Children will not abide any the slightest change in the accustomed aspect. What was the change?
The scarlet letter.
She had taken it off. While they were in the forest and they were holding one another, that's the only time she thought, I can take this weight off. And Pearl said, oh, are you my mother? I don't know. I'm not used to you being my mother without that. And so literally she puts it back on to please the child. I don't put her over my knee, but that's okay. She says, Pearl, look down at thy feet. There before thee on hither side of the brook. Bring it thither. And so she brings it back. And she fastens it again to her bosom. Do you know your mother now, she says. Will you come across the brook now? Yes, I will. Now you are my mother, and I'm your little Pearl. You want to go, ka-clink. But there it is. Why does he keep his hand over his heart? She continues to ask. So anyway, the painful is the minister's painfully embarrassed, but hoping that a kiss might prove a talisman to admit him into the child's kindlier regards, bends forward and presses one on her brow. Pearl breaks away, runs to the brook, stoops over it, and washes it off. And the fateful interview comes to a close. The dell, which was to be left a solitude among its dark old trees, notice the sunshine's gone, starts in sunshine, ends in dark, which with their multitudinous tongues would whisper long of what had passed there, and no mortal be the wiser. And the melancholy brook would add this other tale to the mystery, which its little heart was already overburdened. That's amazing. Okay, now then you've got the minister in a maze. Chapter 20. This one's long. Is that what you? All these are so. These last ones. But again, I think what he's doing a lot of is it's really the psychology of it. Y'all kind of want just action, and this is the psychology of this. Now this minister has got to decide what he's got to do. Does he not? Before he reached home, his inner man gave him other evidences of a revolution in the sphere of thought and feeling. Suddenly, he just looks people down like he hadn't before. An old man addressed him with paternal affection, and he hardly answers him. Never was there a more beautiful example of how the majesty of age and wisdom might comport itself. When the Reverend Dimsdale, and by the way, at this point, he's gotten free, and so what does freedom do for him?
Makes him go kind of makes him weird.
Makes him weird, makes him go a little crazy. So now he just kind of says what he thinks, and up to now, he's had a complete cap on all of his feelings, and suddenly he just says, you're ugly and your mother dresses you funny. It's like, whoa, that's the minister. What in the world? And so it's very, very uncomfortable. So his freedom does not do well for him here. He says to himself, what is it that haunts and tempts me thus? Am I mad, or am I given over utterly to the fiend? Did I make a contract with him in the forest and sign it in my blood? And does he now summon me to its fulfillment by suggesting the performance of every wickedness which his most foul imagination may conceive? So he's recognizing, I'm out of control. The witch lady says, where have you been? Whoa. She says, ha ha ha, we must needs talk thus in daytime. You carry it off like an old hand, but at midnight in the forest we shall have other talk together. Has he given himself back over to that? Has he signed a pact with the black man? Oh, that's close, isn't it? Or right on. I'm afraid he's talking about running away with a married woman. Now he even knows for sure she's married and not a widow because Chillingworth's there. And does one sin make another sin okay? No. So what I want you to see from this is Hawthorne is teaching you, or trying to teach you, as much as you kind of in yourself would kind of wish that they could be together, it still is a sin. And so that doesn't make it right. He says, have I sold myself? He says, he's very concerned about what's going on. They're coming up on what holiday?
When the coronation of the new governor.
Okay, the coronation of the new governor, and there's going to be like everybody in town. Again, it's going to give him a complete audience of everybody there. Chillingworth is saying, let me use my poor skill to make you strong for the election sermon tomorrow. And the minister says, heaven grant it be a better one than what I've been doing. But touching your medicine, kind sir, in the present frame of body, I need it not. Don't you kind of wonder if he's not been giving him something along that would make him sicker? I do. He didn't want to kill him, but he just wants to make him miserable. So, does he come back and confront Chillingworth? No, he doesn't, does he? Okay, now we come to the New England holiday in 21. It's been 7 years since the first scaffold scene. Pearl is decked out with gaiety. Everybody is there. He comes up to give his sermon. Okay, just tell me what happens.
He gives his
Super good sermon.
Okay, gives a super good sermon,
and he falls and dies.
and everyone thinks he's amazing, and then he walks outside of the church,
And
People want to help him, but he.
and by the time he's walking out of the church, I think he's probably already having a heart attack, and it's like, I cannot die with this on my conscience, no matter what anyone thinks. And he gets up, crawls up the stairs for all he's worth, and opens his shirt, and everyone goes. And Hester and Pearl climb the scaffold to be with him as he's dying, as I lay dying. That's another story. But sorry. Oh, now you have the marketplace again, filled with people. I'm just looking at this. The procession. He leads the procession. And again, one of the things that your author is doing is, it's not like you don't know what's coming. You kind of do. By this time, you figured it out, and he just delays it and delays it and delays it and delays it. It's like, oh, can we not just get there? You know, it just drives you crazy.
Yeah, he talks about the sailors.
I know.
Yeah.
I tend, when I get to the end of a book like this, I'm just going and wait to get to the right thing. Have any of y'all learned any speed reading, where you take three fingers and just go down the? Yeah, I do that when it's not something I need to take notes or something on.
What do you do?
I just speed reading,
Just reads at the end.
Take three.
You read the
Three
little-
fingers.
and I'm just and I'm reading this whole thing.
Whoa.
Wait, what is she?
She's like, takes the
Yeah, I
fingers
get
and reads
nothing
the
out
words in
of
between.
that.
Just kind of look at it.
And so the whole idea is, and let me just say, when you get a master's degree in English, you kind of have to do that. There it is. The magistrates are all there. It was his observation that since Mr. Dimsdale first set foot on New England shore, he'd exhibited such energy, had such a gait and such an air. So they're amazed at how feeble he's become and how far down he's gone. She's watching him closely, hoping that he's gonna finish the sermon and go back and pick up his satchel and meet her in the forest, and they're just gonna go the other way. That's what she really would love to happen.
So wait, not go on a ship with Chillingworth or do that? What she want?
She
That
wants
was so.
Isn't that the saddest thing?
Wait.
They're gonna escape. They're gonna go down and get on the ship. And Chillingworth finds out and says, "Ooh, think I'll go back to England."
What a
I was
cool
like,
man.
Oh, is he awful? Oh, he's the most awful. And again, you've got to finally look at that. And he just almost looks like the black man. He's become so evil in what he's doing. I think it's hilarious. They're down in the crowd, and Pearl says, "Mother, is that the man that kissed my forehead in the forest?" No. You love little kids, don't you? Now hold thy peace, little Pearl. We must not talk in the marketplace about what happens to us in the forest. So big cover up going on here. Mistress Hibbins comes by, of course. She's always got to get in her 2 cents worth. The little witch lady. Pearl says, Mistress Hibbins says, my father is the prince of the air. If thou callest me that by that ill name, I shall tell him of thee, and he shall chase thy ship with a tempest. This is where she's talking to Chillingworth, I think.
Or
Yeah.
it's a sailor.
Oh, it's a sailor? Okay. She's talking to a
What part
sailor.
are you on?
I mean, right at the end of 22.
Okay. Oh, I got a lot of
Oh, so
flipping here.
Okay. The mother is yonder woman with the scarlet letter, said the seaman, will you carry her a message for me? And again, that the idea was that they had an escape plan. And I think just in our human heart of hearts, we kind of wish it could have happened. But, so then you have the revelation of the scarlet letter, 23 and 24, and you're finally going, finally we're getting there. He finishes his sermon. Once more, a train of venerable and majestic fathers was seen moving through a broad pathway of the people, who drew back reverently on either side as the governor and magistrates, the old and wise men, the holy ministers, and all that were eminent and renowned, advanced into the midst of them. And then they're in the marketplace. Notice I even think there's halos around him. I think that's funny. Were there not the brilliant particles of a halo in the air about his head? I mean, this is the pouring hot coals upon the head of the sinner, you know. So etherealized by spirit was he, and so apotheosized by the worshipping of his admirers, that his footsteps in the procession really tread upon the dust of the earth. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, could this have been any worse? And so, who tries to stop him? Chillingworth. He says, madman, hold, what is your purpose? Wave back that woman and cast off that child. All shall be well. Do not blacken your fame and perish in dishonor. And he calls him tempter. Ah, tempter, methinks thou art too late. With God's help I shall escape thee now. And that is exactly the truth. Confession. He's going to make confession. He says, Hester print in the name of him so terrible and so merciful, who gives me grace at this last moment to do what I withheld from doing 7 years ago. Come hither now and twine thine strength about me. And so support me upon yonder scaffold. And the crowd is in tumult. And he gets up there and he says, is this not better than what we dreamed of in the forest? In other words, is the truth not better than the cover-up? And yes, it is. For thee and Pearl, be it as God shall order. And God is merciful. Okay, people of England, he shrieks, ye that have loved me, ye that have deemed me holy, behold me here, the one sinner of the world. Who in the Bible said, I'm the worst sinner of anybody?
He committed the sin with last year.
Pardon?
Is it-
Not David. Paul said, he said, I am the worst sinner ever. I did all these horrible things. And so, and he goes on and literally says, and it was him, he continued, God's eye beheld that the angels were ever pointing at it. Behold, a dreadful witness of my sin. And with a convulsive motion, he tears away the ministerial band from before his breast. It was revealed, but it were irreverent to describe the revelation. Even
seriously?
now, you want to say, seriously? Even now you're not going to tell me what this was? And so we have to just ultimately make inference, do we not, that it was a carved letter A. The horror-stricken multitude is concentered on the ghastly miracle. And it's awful. And Chillingworth kneels down beside him and says, thou hast escaped me. Golly. And the minister says, may God forgive you too. Okay, when this happens, who all is released? Dimsdale for sure. And he dies there.
Chillingworth.
Chillingworth. He's got no vengeance left to live. Okay, now Chillingworth lives for a while. What good deed does Chillingworth do by the end of his life?
Give stuff to Pearl.
He wills everything to Pearl, the child he might have had with the wife he did have. Okay? So he lives everything to Pearl. Who else is released? Pearl. Finally, she has an earthly father. And there's some great release there. He says, my little Pearl, dear little Pearl, wilt thou kiss me now? And she kisses his lips. I will you, Daddy. The spell was broken. The great scene of grief in which the wild infant bore a part had developed all her sympathies, and as her tears fell upon her father's cheeks, they were the pledge that she would grow up amid human joy and sorrow, nor forever do battle with the world, but be a woman in it. So she becomes normal. What happens to Pearl long term?
She gets married.
She grows up nice and normal and gets married.
Has lots of it.
And ends up with lots of money. She becomes an heiress in this respect. And the final word comes forth. He says, his last words, he said, by bringing me hither to die this death of triumphant ignominy before the people, had either of these agonies been wanting, I'd been lost forever. Praised be his name, his will be done. Farewell. And that's the final word to come forth from with his expiring breath. And the multitude is just silent till then. And they just break out in awe and wonder. Amazing. Conclusion. Okay, what happens to Hester Prynne? You're going to have to know by this test what happens to all these major characters.
She takes Pearl somewhere.
Goes to England.
She leaves. There's no reason now for her to stay. Okay, she takes Pearl to England and she finds someone to marry there.
And then she
Comes back.
comes
Then she
back.
goes
And
back.
then she returns. Does she wear the scarlet letter?
No.
I thought she does.
She puts it back on, yeah.
I think she
Oh, yeah,
does.
she does.
I think when she comes back to Boston, she puts it back on. Okay, the scarlet letter now has meant 3 different things. It started with adultery, then it was Abel, and finally it is angel. We have, for some reason, when we reset the clock, we have new sounds, and so
What?
I know
Is it
it's
PM
thrown
and AM?
every single class. Yes.
PM and AM.
Oh, it could be that. Who knows? But there it is. Okay. So she literally, this is her home. And she comes, would you have come back here?
No.
Not only no, but heck no. Oh my gosh. Why in the world would anybody have come back under that? But now what does the A mean? Able. Able.
Oh, I thought it meant
So it went from adultery to angel.
Wait, last one was angel.
Oh.
Angel, right?
The second one was
Angel.
Abel.
Abel, and then the third one was angel? Okay. Okay, be sure that you've got that down for sure.
No. Doesn't it go adultery, angel, Abel?
It
No.
means
The second
angel
one was
for
definitely
government.
Oh yeah, the A in the sky meant angel for Governor Winthrop
So,
who
okay,
died.
we're not.
Okay, so Pearl, the elf child, the demon offspring, as some had said, became the richest heiress of her day in the New World. Not improbably, this circumstance wrought a very material change in the public estimation. Well, there it is. I'm at the very end of the conclusion. Had the mother and child remained here, little Pearl, at a marriageable period of life, might have mingled her wild blood with the lineage of the devoutest Puritan among them. But in no long time after the physician's death, the wearer of the scarlet letter disappeared, and Pearl along with her. But then she returns. It says, in all those years it had never once been opened, but either she had unlocked it, or the decayed wood or iron yielded to her hand, or she glided shadow-like through the impediments, and at all events went in. So she comes back to this threshold. She turns partly around for, and by the way, threshold, does anyone have doors and windows?
No, I don't have
doors
doors.
and windows. Would you?
As your symbol.
As your symbol?
I think threshold, yeah.
Okay, thresholds. Okay, notice your threshold here. Ooh. Okay, so on the threshold she paused, turned partly round for perchance the idea of entering all alone, and also changed. The home of so intense a former life was more dreary and desolate than even she could bear. But her hesitation was only for an instant, though long enough to display a scarlet letter on her breast. As she came back, she puts it back on. She had taken up her long-forsaken shame. But where was little Pearl? If she's still alive, she must have been in the flush and bloom of early womanhood, blah, 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 off in England. And there was a more real life for Hester Prynne here in New England than in the unknown region where Pearl had found a home. Here had been her sin, here her sorrow, and here yet to be her penitence. She had returned therefore and resumed of her own free will, for not the sternest magistrate of that iron period would have imposed it. No one would have made her do this. She resumed the symbol of which we've related so dark a tale. Never afterwards did it quit her bosom. But in the lapse of the toilsome, thoughtful, and self-devoted years that made up Hester's life, the scarlet letter ceased to be a stigma which attracted the world's scorn and bitterness, but became a type of something to be sorrowed over and looked upon with awe, yet with reverence. Women with dreary burdens of heart came to her. They came to her cottage demanding why they were wretched, asking for remedies. She comforted and counseled them. She assured them that there would be a brighter period of time for them. Hester vainly imagined she herself might be a destined prophetess, but had long since recognized the impossibility that any mission of divine and mysterious truth should be confided to a woman so stained with sin, bowed down with shame, and even burdened with lifelong sorrow. She really probably never forgave herself. The angel and apostle of the coming revelation must be a woman indeed, but lofty, pure, and beautiful, and wise, moreover, not through dusky grief, but the ethereal medium of joy, and showing how sacred love should make us happy by the truest test of a life successful to such an end. She just said, I remember saying this a couple of years before Malcolm passed away. He said, why do you think all of this has happened to us? And I just said, I don't know, but I do know that as Christians we're called to do this right and to do this well. And that's what she's trying to do. I don't care what it costs us, and I don't care how hard it is. We're going to walk this thing out, and we're going to do it well. Last paragraph. So said Hester Prynne, and glanced her sad eyes downward at the scarlet letter. And after many, many years a new grave was delved near an old and sunken one in that burial ground beside which King's Chapel had since been built. So where are they going to bury her? But not quite, not totally.
Not too close.
It was near that old and sunken grave, yet with a space between. They never really deserved to be together. She was a married woman, as if the dust of two sleepers had no right to mingle. Yet one tombstone served for both. Interesting. All around there were monuments carved with armorial bearings, and on this simple slab of slate, as the curious investigator may still discern and perplex himself with the purport there appeared the semblance of an engraved escutcheon. There's your word. Aren't you so proud you know that? It bore a device, a herald's wording of which might serve for a motto and brief description of our now concluded legend. So somber is it and relieved only by one ever-glowing point of light, gloomier than the shadow. On a field, sable, that means black, the letter A, gullus, gold. It's now gold.
It says colored red.
Colored red. I thought gullus meant gold.
It says that in the footnotes there, it says red
In your footnotes it says red? Okay, so you've got a black stone
with a red.
with a red A. For both of them. A stone, and almost you can see these, I just draw it, I just can see it. Okay, you've got these two graves with a space between. And so they do some monument over the tomb. Whoa. Okay, very good. Okay, did you love this book? I mean, bottom line, you might have the reading was laborious.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. However, I want you to know if you don't learn to struggle through some good, healthy level of reading, and all you can read is the newspaper, which is 8th grade level, and comic books and emails, then you're not going to be an educated person. And you must not stop reading when you graduate. I mean, reading is a lifelong skill, and ideally I'm trying to sell you on some books that, though it is a bit laborious, the story is so worth it. Now, some of them are laborious and not worth it. That would be Moby Dick. Okay. Okay, that's like, 80 pages of story and 720 pages of the history of the whaling industry. Just stab me in the eye. I'm sorry. Okay, so that's horrible. Okay, we're going to take a short bathroom break, and then we'll do a little bit of review to get you ready. And don't forget that your symbol things. Oh my goodness. Tyler came in and showed me the picture he's going to put behind his symbolism. Oh, you've all got a lot to live up to.
What?
What?
You never told us.
Your symbol.
We have not talked about this.
We talked about it for like 5
No,
seconds.
we haven't.
I have no idea what
signed
we're supposed
them,
to. Yeah, you signed them, and that's all you really did.
Well, I don't have to talk about it. I signed them and said, follow this all the way through the book.
Are we just writing an essay or?
No, we will talk about it when you come back.
Okay.
And I may have to give you a little more time since you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah, go ahead and put.
Okay, I will turn this off for just a moment. Turning you off for a second.